Yes. So I welcome Mattia Ronconi. Are you around? You will be presenting representation and reconstruction of memories and visual subculture. Yeah.
So can I start?
Yes, you can. Go, Mattia. If you want, if you need, present yourself and go move forward.
Wait. Okay, here we are. I'm Mattia Ronconi, and I'm going to present an investigation born in the context of my master degree final project at Istituto Politecnico of Cavado and Ave, in co-authorship with Professor Jorge Pereira and Paula Tavares. Our under-development study aims to investigate the contribution of animation to the documentation of the graffiti writing and deciphering its interpretation for uninformed audiences about this subject. So the documentary work is developed with representation strategies and narrative reconstructions through the project for an animated documentary short film that we will produce by this research. And we think that the possibilities deriving from the animation techniques and their hybridization with graffiti characteristics that are not only the aesthetics of graffiti writing, but also the memories of its protagonist, it will be possible to explore new concepts and inform audiences outside of that movement. So the research faces several points, such as the, of course, bibliographical research that aim to delineate the historical framework of graffiti writing and also of animation as a documentary technique. And we are going to collect testimonies by interviews and documents archiving, such as photo of pieces, sketch, newspaper article, and everything about the stories of the interviews. Also, we are going to make an analysis and a re-elaboration of the gated materials for the project delineation of the animated documentary. This research aims to understand how animation and languages from the graffiti can be integrated to the documentary genre to preserve memories of this subculture and translate its characteristic for less informed audiences. Another objective is to create a portrait that is heterogeneous but not complete, of course, of that movement, studying the protagonist in a provincial area of the northern Italy. Moreover, the research aimed to understand how hybridization gave rise to new techniques of animation, facilitating the communication of a visual art through the animation itself. So we started by defining the documentary file work in the province of Ferrara in northern Italy. That is a provincial area near Bologna, but not influenced by the primary arrival of the graffiti writing in the end of the 90s, 80s. The research aimed to collect testimonies and memories emerged during interviews to 3 writers that are Said, Musk, and Hirashi from that area, that they are not well known at international level, but they are and were important for the development of the discipline in that area. And the respondents have been chosen with the aim to have an heterogeneous and multifaceted documentary material, indeed because they have different ages, background, and approaches to the practice of graffiti writing. We collected also visual material of the respondents, such as archive photos, sketches, newspaper articles, old fanzines, and every kind of visual material that can help our documentation work. The audio and video records of the interviews will be used to develop the script and the basis for the storyboard of the short film, and also as a narration tool to accompany the animation in the final project. Also, the video will be used to be analyzed to know the expression and the expression of the interview to create then their respective characters. Simultaneously, the visual material will be implemented in the short film as a support to the narration and the animation to bring multiple layers of information and work as a kind of infographic material. I want to mention some phrases of the book Teoria del Writing of Alessandro Ferri, also known as Dado. From the beginning, the discipline of writing has been proposed as a method of representation of the subject. The scene of the one's name is the communication of one's individuality. In writing, style is identifiable with a personal method of combination, design, and intuition of form and letter. The writer describes itself through a language, the drawing of the writing and the composition of the form. Is something similar with the citation of Andrea before about Spock, about the style is always the same, but the form changes a bit each tag. So, starting from this concept, we selected a range of pieces painted by the respondents during the last 3 years, with the objective to analyze the letter style of each one, deconstruct the letters, the composition, and find the shapes or elements that are the basis of the letter and the piece construction. Then, by interposing these results with the psychology of the forms, we will try to find the existence of analogies or not between the personality and of the respondents and the styles of their graffiti, of their pieces, with the final purpose to use these results in the character design of the respondents. And as we can see in this slide, it's easy to find out that these graffiti pieces owns to 3 different artists because of the style. And also in this case, telling that there are painted for different words that are Juarez, Patos, Saed, and Raque. We can state that who painted them is the same writer, and this is because of the style. Changing the word, we can recognize the same writer because of its style. And as I said, going on, we deconstructed their letter, thinking about the possible process that they used to write them or to draw them, and found out the shapes that they commonly use to draw letters. This is an example in this slide of the work that we did, a part of the work we did. And starting from a photo of a piece, we draw the outline and try to consider the possible logic that each writer used to create the letters design. And then try to find out what the recurring shapes in their designs. And this is the analysis we made to the mask is a writer. And we can notice that he uses fewer complex forms and composition. And their letters use rounded shapes with not sharpened. And following the theories of the form psychology, we found that the rounded form suggests us friendly character, and knowing him as a person, I can say that it's true by studying his letters. Or another study in the Hirashi letter forms, that he is more younger and active of the three writers. And we can state that his composition are more dynamics, and the letters are composed by triangles or sharpened shapes. Going on in our work, using this form in the character design can allow to represent their personality by the psychology of the forms theory, also represent its letter style, and consequently their last artistic production, because we will use the forms they use in the graffiti to create their characters. And also we can keep anonymous its real identity, because we are not going to use a realistic representation of themselves. This is an example of the design for a mask in this case. And we proceeded designing the character model sheets that will be guides to follow during the animation process. And we try to use for the design of each character, as I said, the shapes and style that distinguishes the artwork of each writer that participated in the project. Here we can see, for example, are the designs for the hand of each participant, that their hands are different because of the style of each writer that participated. Also, for the purpose of the documentation and the use of multiple information layers, we plan to animate the scenes using two kinds of representative spaces. One are the atelier or habitation of the respondents, where there will be animated the interviews recreated. And we will design the objects and the furniture to help the communication of the personalities of the characters. And the other spaces are the one referring to the memories. So we are going to recreate the memories inside of the black books that are the diaries of the writers. And they are like a symbolic representation of a memories receptacle. And the use of this space representative
Hello, Mattia. I think Mattia, we lost Mattia there.
Techniques with the aesthetics and documents, visual documents from the graffiti writing movement will help to create a documentary short film that explore this movement and illustrate it to less informed audiences. Also using not only the aesthetics that are the most evident characteristic of the writing, but also the memories of its protagonist. We hope to create a new knowledge about the aspect of the movement and we hope to illustrate its the essence of this subculture, not only the painted wall, but everything that happens before and after the painting. And it's all. I hope you understand me.
Yeah, it was perfect, and I'm very curious to see how the production of the movie goes on. I don't know if Jorge, you want to add something else?
Sure. Well, thank you. First of all, hi Pedro, hi everyone. Congratulations, Mattia, for the presentation. This is, as Mattia mentioned, this is an ongoing project that is currently under development in the context of the Masters in Illustration and Animation at the Polytechnic of Cabo de Nave in Barcelos, where we have a lot of students working on animation. And this particular project was quite interesting because it bridges this documentary strategies to this specific theme of graffiti writing, and more precisely in a specific region of Italy, from Ferrara, where Mattia is from. So this is, as I mentioned, an ongoing project. Mattia has recently concluded his project, and we are settling the necessary conditions to continue the project, namely making some applications for funding and budget funding for the production of the short film, which, as we all know, is another step, a very difficult one, but we truly believe in the quality of the application and the work that Mattia has directed and developed, and we are really looking forward for it. And congratulations to all of you. I was commenting with Mattia previously. I am really surprised to see so many Italian participants on this event, which is great. So looking forward for network, and if you can, give us some tips and suggestions in order to network. Of course, we don't have the fantastic coffee breaks that always allows us to do it that way on the better way, but nevertheless we can try to interact at least virtually.
Great. I don't know. Well, we have the chat, so we can talk and you can share information there. But if there are some questions that you want to place now for Mattia or for the Paulo, I think both will welcome. Anyway, we also need to move forward, otherwise the time will get shorter. So I personally, Jorge and Mattia, I'm very interested in knowing more and be following your work. When I had the age of Mattia, when I was 20, I was working on animation, so I have some experience on that. I worked professionally in Anima Nostra. I worked there. So
yeah, great experience.
There's always
time to get back. Could get back.
Yeah, it's interesting area. Yeah. So next speaker, please move forwards.
Hello.
Hello, Laima.
Can I?
Yes, you are on. Now
okay,
for
so
heritage and again spontaneity. Yeah.
Yes, so it's kind of continuation about improvisation, and I want just to say that my paper has not so much to do with memory, but it's more like a methodological approach to how to research or how to explore the relationships of practice between like heritage and urban art maybe and urban space. And I follow the argument of Alison Young that street art cannot be separated from urban environment. As such, we cannot focus only, I think, in order to understand it, only on an object. An object in itself presents a lot of problems. So as my title is Heritage Research as Improvisation, and you see the picture, and will be about this urban space. It's called Urban Hotel Havana. It's a backyard in Oslo, and it's standing on the left side is Muñoz. He's a visual artist, and on the right side is Luanda, is an improviser, a physical improviser, and we both live in this urban space. And in a way, this research started with a coincidental meeting of Muñoz while I was celebrating birthday of Luanda in 2018 in May. But before I will gonna go and explain what I do refer to improvisation. So there is always the background why we are choosing this type of topics. So of course, this as well the research has influenced my background as a physical improviser, but as well it's influenced my background as a heritage researcher. I worked for like almost 10 years in heritage field and urban planning. And now I start my double PhD degree between Roskilde University and University of Southeastern Norway. For me, it's like an interest, and I am fascinated of heritage research, but as well, I'm very frustrated of this field because it is very conservative. So this frustration as well made me push kind of, to how to free myself from this quite conventional field, and as well to free myself from the conventional academical field. So about backgrounds, heritage now it's not only about a preservation of memories or something, and it is like a broad and interdisciplinary study field, and it includes like a culture practice, landscapes, identity, memory, heritage tourism, performance, and affect studies, gender studies. I mean, it's not limited. However, despite the significant innovations during the 3 last decades in heritage field, still as a critical heritage scholars identify that like Emma Waterton and Steve Watson, that heritage research and practice are still led by conventional problem solving and object-led scientific thinking. We express that conventional heritage research reflects both diversity of its objects and range of its discipline basis. There can be little doubt, however, that it simultaneously reflects the residential positivism that lies at the heart of what we still call social science. Another critical heritage scholar identifies what is in itself about the heritage research and performance that is lacking simply the liveliness, thrill, or even plain boredom of actual event. And of course, there are a lot of limitations of this conventional research for the street art, because as Andrea identified this street art, as I see as one of the most liveliness and free spirit art form. And when we start to frame this free forms and putting in a boxes, then we have challenges. And this conventional practices present different challenges. First of all, they fail to address street art crucial relationships with everyday urban life, as well as some thermal, performative, and affective components. They also tend to create dichotomous representations between objects, people, experts, and street art community, and divide between the research and research objects. For example, like as the case here, like is Dolk, one of the most famous Norwegian artists, and of course, like preservation technique, like this attempts to preserve is like a common strategy with tangible techniques such as plexiglass. It's usually applied by the authorities to a famous artist, and this is we can identify it across the globe as a Banksy in UK, different cities, and then Black Claret in Germany, and Harry, in Melbourne, and Dolk as a famous as well that. And this is creates challenge, both because it's of increased commodification of works to encourage private actors to steal the works, but as well we have it's as well it's unequal environment, because the actors with dominant positions tend to prioritize the preservation of mural paintings legal street art works, sometimes legal works of famous street artists, while demonstrating little to no consideration of artworks from lesser known artists. Moreover, the justification for preserving street art works of famous street artists such as Dolko, Banksy can relate to Bourdieu's concept of forms of capital. This, to what Bourdieu calls aesthetic legitimacy, may be given by actors from dominant field to preserve certain illegal street art works accordingly to artists' ability to acquire economic, culture, and symbolical capital. So because of this all the limitations, I turn my focus towards improvisation, and improvisation I define both in relation to the improvisational studies and Monteori, which see improvisation as a hybrid form, hybrid practice, and which is intertwined between order and disorder, tradition and innovation, security and risk, the individual and the group and the composition. But more precisely, I'm defining improvisation within the frames of the performativity within non-representational theory, which emphasize the importance of ritualized performances, habitual, non-habitual behaviors, play, and where scripted and unscripted, uncertain and successful doings of which everyday life is made. And according to urban researchers, Alan Lachman, he says, reframing research as creative and performative practice allows the researcher to address some novel questions about the cultures of urban everyday life, but more conventional representational orientated methods fail to address adequately. So let's go to the improvisational space. So here, as I mentioned it, this research started spontaneously with coincidental meeting with Muñoz, and I was observing his practice, and I didn't know before who he was, and I just met it during the birthday party, and he suddenly said, "Oh, I'm planning to restore this mural which you see behind it. It's 20 years old." I said, "Wow, it is great, you know, and I can apply easily to my research, you know." But it never happened. But suddenly, while I was randomly meeting up with him, I started recognizing about him and about his artistic practice. And as well, I started recognizing different elements of this urban space. So, for example, it turned out with Munkmaler, which is a colloquium name of from the Edvard Munch, famous Norwegian painter, and he's doing everything associated with Edvard Munch's mask. So he creates like a chocolate and sculptures and parodies, as like a penguin sover aldri, like on a 1,000 banknote of Norwegian, which is means money never sleeps. So, and through the 2 years, 3 years period, I start recognizing and identifying when he start, for example, painting his collaborative project with another visual artist, Ørjan, Norwegian artist. And I could explore the different elements and observations through the time, as well his exhibition, which has developed, and the changes of the environment, seasonality from different 4 seasons, atmospheres, and more. So then the question is, like, have I used any methods? Because before I had begun to write this essay, and I was, while still exploring the Hotel Havana urban space, I had not yet considered particular theories or methods for gathering data. Even I was taking photos, and several hundred photos over a 2 years period. I was not anticipating they would generate any knowledge, and I was not applying photographic scientific methods. Since that time, I have begun to consider several questions. What happened in that urban space? How can I explain this without resource to methodology? Did I use any methods at all? Can my improvisational practice be considered as methods.
3-4 minutes, Laima, sorry. 3-4 minutes. Okay.
In search for that answers to this question, several methodological approaches emerged. One of these was non-representational theory, which helped me to structure this research. In retrospect, I would hold, but indeed I use certain methods in collective my data, and this method lies in improvisational everyday practice and performativity. In my empirical investigation, improvisation occurred from my random and spontaneous experience with the visual artist Monk Malo, his painting practice, and the Hotel Havana urban space. My improvisational practices functioned as a performative method, leading me to different discoveries about Monk Malo, his art, and Hotel Havana. My performance at Hotel Havana was itself as a way of knowing, where I was simple standing in the space, talking to Malo, photographing, sensing, being, seeing, or walking around. I was participating in a knowing process. This research continued evolving through my integration of theory and practice, which enabled me to broaden my knowledge not only about Monk Malo and his artistic practice, but also movement, change, affected atmospheres, materiality, and counters more generally. In turn, the poetics of improvisational space endangered creativity, experimentation, and new theoretical and practical knowledge about everyday urban life and urban space. So to conclude, improvisational research is a creative process, and our heritage work can become an inquiry into the dialogical and recursive relationship between subject and object, self and other, head and heart, an ongoing invitation to a navigation of the paradoxical nature of creative process. Thank you. Hello?
Thank you. That was terrific.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Sorry, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're
so
welcome.
much. Yeah, it was very nice. Thank you very much, Laima. I will ask for any questions directly for Laima, if there are some.
You want them? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Carlos. Yes.
Oh, hi.
Can.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm, you know, in terms of how you summarize this about, and kind of the kind of broader approach of documenting and archiving or engaging with public history and heritage. And it's a great proposition, because as we get older, we're starting to see the things that we loved when we were younger in our communities either get painted or rebuilt. And so is there a strategy you think that can be implemented, right, that would help bring awareness or preservation both to community and property owners, because we're at the mercy of them. So I'm just curious as to what, you know, outside of identifying some of these core issues, what kind of solutions can be proposed?
First of all, my aim was not archiving, and I wanted to detach myself and move away from this object and preservation kind of as an object. So for me, in my perception, understanding, the changes can only achieve when we start really using proper concepts and understandings of heritage, but as well of the moving away from the just object-based understanding of heritage and street art, you know, and to engaging to more broader aspects, immaterial aspects. So for me, it's more like, you know, how to shape this mentality, like which is called, like a Smith critical theorist called authorized heritage discourse. Like, if, for example, of something associated as heritage as kind of value, you know, and this is still like, you know, it's like 1,000 already researchers, heritage researchers revised that and presented what it is this Cartesian approach, but it still is applied in the heritage field, and is still dominated now for street art. and different heritage researchers using that. And while we are using that, we entering themselves to address heritage discourse. So for me, it's more like, how to move on, how to understand, because for me, heritage is, first of all, is a contemporary phenomenon. I'm myself a human geographer, and I'm interested more in what is happening now, Yeah. But it's complex issue.
And great, yeah.
Yeah, it is, but because heritage is intrinsically tied, to a lot of these, to the object, right? And yes, to some things, ideas and cultural norms and behaviors and traditions. But I think with graffiti in particular, the one thing that I find is its interest in this manner, and how it kind of, in a weird way, in a very less academic way, the culture was concerned with these issues, but didn't know how to articulate that, right? And kind of what was it measuring itself against, right? Whereas street art can do that because of the formality of the type of art that it is, right? There's more than enough reference to that. Yeah, so it's again, a very interesting conversation, and it's layered.
Yeah, but the thing is that heritage, the problem is what is perceived as object, but heritage is a process. Yeah. So, and as well, graffiti, or even if we look about hip hop culture, so we see the similar trends, right? Why we are like now considered as a heritage, because different processes contribute to that. So it included commodification, mediation, practice of everyday life, privatization. So different forms, hybrid forms, which is constituted. So this is what is, I wish, what we would start like, more engaging in with like a more ontological understanding rather than fake, understanding as something as an object and frozen in time, which is kind of paradoxical.
Right. What reference can you give us towards that theory that may be a kind of an obvious one for us?
Many theories I can
just more recent, more obvious for us.
I can share as well this article. This presentation is based on article, and it's an introduction as well about. But I could send you many brilliant authors wrote, like David Crouch and Halbrook, who is my supervisor now.
I think can I step in? I think you can use the chat for that.
Yeah.
We have also three great presentations coming up. One from Jacob Kimvall that will talk about
I love Jacob.
Case study. Isabel also, she will be talking about old intervention, and also Jaume, you will talk about history. So we have still three great presentations to talk about the past, so we'll have the opportunity to talk more. So Jacob, can you come forward so we do not take this too late? Yeah, are you there?
I can't share the screen yet. I don't know if Laima has to take away.
Maybe Laima, can you unshare?
Okay, I will. So how do I stop sharing?
Yeah,
stop sharing.
There you
go. Like now I stop sharing.
Thank you.
So yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
we can.
You can hear me? Yes, good. Hello, everybody. My name is Kimvall. I'm an art historian at Stockholm University. And I know many of you already.
Jacob, you are not having the best sound conditions. I don't know if you can improve that.
Okay. See if it works better without
the heads.
Now it's much better, I think.
It's much better. Okay, good. So well, I will talk about a case which is not, which is very much related to what Laima talked about, but it's not as theoretical. And I would love to dwell into discussion with Laima and several of you others later. So just briefly about myself, I'm an art historian, and I'm studying graffiti and street art from graffiti since I'm I'm a former graffiti writer, and I'm primarily interested in the discourses framing and defining graffiti, and more particular, different public and institutional responses to graffiti. And this is a piece that I studied already in my bachelor thesis. It's called Highway. It's by Schoff. It's done in the city of the part of Stockholm that's called Rågsved, which is a working class suburb. And it's actually still partly there, which is something I will return to. So this is a photo I took about 2004 when I worked on my bachelor. But this is a photo of it borrowed from the book Svensk Old School Graffiti, when it was more new. I think this is when it was about brand new, circa 1989. And this will be one of the pieces that the main pieces that I will focus on. And I just want to show you some different, the condition here in Stockholm with the different weathers. So this is, we have extremely dry and cold climate in the winter, which is difficult for paintings outside. And this is also what Emma talked about earlier. These are photos I have in my archive, but I don't know who took them. So it might be me, it might be somebody else. It was not important. I don't think it was me, it's probably somebody else. But, and this is just to get an idea how it's located in the city.
Seems Lisbon.
This is on November 9th, 2016. That's when Donald Trump was elected and Stockholm was hit by a blizzard. And we saw it as doomsday a little bit. So I see this is a piece that has been under discussion for being preserved. And this is a discussion that have been increased last few years. And not only this piece, in Sweden, we have a few different discussions going on at the same time. There is protest against the demolition of a third of Snösätra Graffiti Hall of Fame. There's a Swedish antique show where they discussed Donny White. And we also have a Fascinate. So this is a part of a larger discussion about preservation and conservation and graffiti as a part of the cultural heritage. And I would see this also as part of a larger trend within the European hip-hop and graffiti communities, where we have seen a number of books written from the subculture, but with a clear distance in time. And I mean, hip-hop and graffiti also, as a part of hip-hop as I see it, are interested in history. But the change here, I say, is that these books take on they take on the European hip-hop history rather than the US history, and they take it on as something that is in the distance, in the past, rather than a part of a prolonged now. So it's history. It's another period in a sense, and this is a shift in the field, I would say, and it's of course connected to other larger. And it's not only, of course, in Sweden. This is the graffiti and street art section in the City Museum of New York. There is also the Dutch journal Urban Heritage, and we also have Carlos here from Museum of Graffiti, and we also have Urban Nation in Berlin, and also, of course, a lot of research like Laima's research, Lachlan McDowell, Samuel Merrill, Susan Hansen. Also, I think on the first Lisbon conference, Alice Nogueira Alves presented also. So this is something that been going on for quite some time. And I'm not claiming to be new, but I have a very concrete case I want to put. So this was the way I got involved or interested in preserving pieces. This was in 2007, together with my friend Tobias Valentin Lindblad. We made an official suggestion to protect Highway and 3 more murals painted in Stockholm between 1989 and 1994. So Red Dragon by Siggy and Dizzy, Midsummer Madness by AK and Spade, Fascinate by Weird or Tariq and Circle. So this is the pieces, and the reason we did it, I would say, was several. I mean, we had four objectives. This was an attempt to officially formalize what was already an existing informal subcultural protection. Nobody would paint over these, but this kind of informal subcultural protection was not a part of the official policies, of course. It was also a way, at the time, we had a very, very hard zero tolerance policy, and it was a way of challenge the stereotypical descriptions of graffiti within. So it was an activist action in a sense. And it was also, as an art historian, I realized that we recognized that there is a need to preserve some graffiti pieces for the future, for sociologists, urban geographers, historians, and art historians. And also a kind of an experiment, I would say. And this is also how I view it today, and see it as also a part of my research, even if it started as something else. It was an examination of what and how something could receive protection. And it was very hypothetical in the beginning. So we suggested this, and already in May 2008, the city planning office supported a protection of one of these pieces, Fascinate. So it could be listed in the city plan. The law is called PBL, Plan och bygglagen. So this is a law. Unfortunately, this suggested listing was rejected in 2008 also by the political board of the city planning. So in a sense, it collided with the zero tolerance policies of Stockholm. And in that sense, I would say it was quite successful in challenging the zero tolerance, because it also became quite absurd for many people outside of the graffiti community what zero tolerance on graffiti actually was. So the politicians talked about that preserving this piece would generate a feeling of insecurity. But this debate went on several years, and in 2015, it was again actually up in the board, and this time it was protected. So this is the first graffiti painting in Sweden protected. And as Ana Luisa Castro and Ana Gariso talked about earlier, different majorities, political majorities, that was in place during this time. However, the suggestion to actually protect all four of them was rejected in 2016. And this is different stakeholders and also different types of protection, where the one that reached Fascinate was a municipality protection, which is much less rigid. But the state, which would have protected all four of them, said that paintings can't be protected, you can only protect building according to the law. So what happened was that Fascinate really kind of decentered all of the other pieces and became very famous in the region throughout these years, and actually marginalized the other paintings, which I would say are just as important. And there was preservation work being done. The municipality tore down the actual building and left the piece here, which is something that I will return to in the end. So this is also the highway seen from the subway. And this is a piece that I have visited every now and then, but it has, at least in the public eye and in the news, been relatively unknown in the official debate. But this was something that was going to change 2 years ago, when the owner of the building started to paint over this piece. And this was reported actually as something that shocked the citizens and the residents of this part of the city. So many residents in Rågsved was shocked when they passed by the center during Tuesday. The classic mural was painted over with blue paint. And later the same day, another report where Hassan Yama talks with the news and says, I remember when they did it, this is Rågsved, this is our identity. So this is kind of it really made the news big time. And even though I followed this piece all since 1989, I've written about it in a bachelor thesis, I was surprised by the power of these reactions, both in others and my own. But to say, I mean, in a sense, this is not so strange. I mean, a piece that has been for almost 30 years, of more than 30 years now, is actually an integral part of the building environment. And the spontaneity in this sense perhaps was the overpainting, I would say. I wrote an indignant thing on Instagram where I complained about that this piece was destroyed. But it was what I didn't know at the time. It was only partly destroyed. And a few hours later, I received a phone call, and a friend said, who is also an educated painter, I think I know how to get rid of the blue paint. So will you join me? And I was like, well, I am preparing my classes. I have a lot of things to do. But who am I if I'm sitting there writing indignant, irritated things on Instagram rather than being there? So in the evening, I was in the place together with other people from the graffiti community, but also from the local community, trying to get rid of this paint. So I have several different roles in this field, both as an activist, as a researcher, as a writer. But this was the first time I was also a practical conservative. So I was community anti-graffiti labor. So you can see me with a gray shirt furthest to the left. So this is, and it's continued over quite a few days. I became a kind of PR person, so I helped, especially Morten, who was the guy who were the kind of project leader. I organized that we got fundings to material. I were communicating through Facebook and Instagram, and wrote about what was happening. There was also a huge amount of press. So what we can see here is all the different TV stations in the left picture reporting live, more or less from the. So there's several hundred clippings, and it was even discussed in the central municipality at the time. And I was interviewed by one of the Boulevard newspapers about my bachelor thesis and how you can interpret this piece. The hidden messages in the famous painting, graffiti painting from Rågsved, is this. So I thought it was interesting in several different senses. Yeah. And it's still something that upset people. This was when I posted yesterday about today's presentation. Toy Company, a very famous old school writer, he wrote, today, I'm still angry that they painted over it with blue paint. So this is something that's going on. And it's part also, I would say, of aging, as several have mentioned today. And Carlos just said, we are part of an aging community, of especially within the graffiti. And this is an account where it makes fun out of adult and aging graffiti writers, but making it fun with love. As you can see here, one of them are equaling, it's called Dudes, this series, and they're equaling spray can art with the Holy Quran and the Bible, Holy Bible. And one of them were definitely addressing, if not me, at least us. So one of the memes says, what the fuck, what the hell? That wall was listed as cultural heritage. So dudes around 50 years old come running and trying to help out. But however, so what we were doing there was a kind of grassrooted restoration and conservation attempt. I think we had to quit after a while because we realized that we might actually destroy the piece rather than saving it. But the discussions about this restoration have been going on, and so far this is not settled yet. It has said last year that they will preserve the wall and try to restore it, but there's so many stakeholders involved. We realized there is the owner of the building, which is somehow reluctant to sign any papers. Of course, there's a local community and the graffiti community, but there is also the municipality and the state. And most, if not all, of these stakeholders have to be on board to actually preserve this piece. Even though we might have failed in restoring the work and the artwork, I would say that this attempt to restore it was important, because it put the finger. It was a performative, in a sense, performative action that pointed out how important this piece is for the local community. And as this question is not settled yet, and even if a piece, at least with Swedish law, gets protected, it's not necessarily safe. So what has happened with Fascinate, that I told you there have been a restoration going on, but last year the municipality said it's too expensive to keep this painting. And after a long debate again, it's in February this year, the protection of Fascinate was abolished. So what I want to say, this is not, I don't have any clear conclusions yet, because this is an ongoing project, in a sense, has been ongoing for almost 15 years. But I would say that what we are seeing here, or what this case that I have trying to outline here, there's much more details I can put in. It's part of a restructuring of the cultural and historical understanding of graffiti. Also, I would say from the beginning, it was very hypothetical that you could preserve graffiti. It was also controversial, both among the municipality politicians, but also among many writers. But today, I would say it is potentially, and to some degree, at least in the case of Highway, it was completely naturalized in Rågsved. Everybody that I met, more or less, were extremely upset about the destruction of the piece. So it's extremely hard, at least in Swedish law, to protect graffiti paintings. And so far, there is at least not the joint combination of stakeholders, together with the economic, technical, and juridical resources, have been able to gather together to preserve a piece. But I would say, my conclusion so far is that the results indicate that this historical process, where graffiti mural have went from hypothetical over theoretical to factual, if still also precarious, cultural heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, great to hear. I don't know if there are questions for these specific case studies of Jacob and the experience. I know we will have two presentations of Isabel and Jaume, but maybe something directed for Jacob. Someone?
Yeah.
Laima?
Well, it is like a very nice. It's very great case study. So it's very great, and I wish that we would have more maybe conversation to talk about that. But it's absolutely, it makes sense, and it's not about historical. I think we are talking about now. So it is about the process, which is extending over time, and this is what it constitutes heritage. So by just naming it as heritage, it is heritage. And we have a similar, one case in also one tag, which exists now 30 years. And it exists while removing and repainting. So there is no one single answer, but I think this is, and becomes a democratical issue when it's from these conflicts and debates, people rethinking about the identities and everything, right? And I don't think that all the work should be removed, because this is like indicates, what people, it's significant. And even if it is significant for 10 people and people want it. So I think this is about, then of course, I think municipality should listen.
Yeah, but the municipality was interested. I must say, the problem right now is that at least the Swedish law demands the participant of both the owner and the regulations, and the owner is not very popular in the area. I wouldn't go as far as to call him a slumlord, but at least some of the people in the area received him as such, and I think a part of the upsetness of the destruction of the wall was also due to the lack of respect from the owner to the local community.
Yeah.
So there was, I could feel, and the owner said that this was a mistake, but nobody believed it was a mistake. He wanted to get rid of the piece because it was much more simple to have a wall. So it's, but I think, it was, at least to me, it was interesting to realize, even for me, how seriously the local community took the destruction of this piece. And it was not a theoretical, as it was in my case to a large degree, or hypothetical. It was, but as I said, it's a part of the urban environment, a piece. Something that I didn't mention, there's so many details to this, but the piece is actually, it's a very special, because you have a gateway down to the main square of this part of the city. So 32 years now, people have went through this painting, and it's also the youth center inside it. So there's so many people who have experienced it, and it's also documented in several different. So it's really that, but it's another paper that how it got the kind of status it got in this part of town. We should continue the discussion. I would love to sit down with you.
If I could just throw this in there for you guys, especially Jacob, on the heels of what you just said, that these pieces, they become cultural landmarking, right? Because of all the activity you mentioned in public and how the public engages with it. We saw that with Lee Quiñones in the early days here in New York City. And that it's a bigger conversation, to you said, to what effect that has, because so many writers and people went, and street art and everything galvanized around it. But yeah, I love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Carl.
Jaume, also you have some question there.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you, Jacob, again for your magic words. It's a pleasure to be here another year. It's just to comment, because the other day a close friend of us, a researcher from Spain, published a book related with this issue. You know, Elena is I think is here also, Elena, that protect the Muelle tag in Madrid. You remember the sample? So related with this topic and more, he made a book about the ephemeral concept on the graffiti scene. Yeah, and it's very interesting. It's a pity because it's in Spanish. maybe Mer and someone of the others can read it. You must learn Spanish. I don't know if you know Spanish.
Poco,
okay.
Suficiente.
Okay, if you know un poco, maybe you can read it. It's really interesting. It's a high blog. It's like I don't know the word in English, but it's a huge study. I attach you the Amazon link if you can.
Good. Yeah. So any more questions for Jacob directly? If not, maybe we move forward to Isabel. I think she's ready also. Isabel, are you around? Yeah. Okay. So please, Isabel, you can take, I don't know if you're muted or something.
Yeah,
but...
yeah, sorry.
Oh,
Here
okay.
I am.
Okay.
Okay. So now. Okay, well, I'm very glad to be here in the panel of the nostalgics, or the vintage panel. Do you hear me okay?
Yes,
okay.
yes, you're fine.
Okay, so let me just check out the time. Okay, so I'm going to dive into an art project that took place in Florence in Italy in 1979. The title of the project is Frogman, and it was developed by Haroldo Marinai. So I expect to transmit my fascination for this project in the few minutes that I have today. Sorry. Okay. So the project Frogman was multidimensional and included the following 7 components that are going to be like my index for today's presentations. So we have an street intervention with stencils. We have the photographs of the stencils. We have the public and the media reaction to the intervention that was somehow incorporated in the project. We had an exhibition and a performance inside the exhibition. We have a literary piece, some text, and we have an artist book. So let's see all of this in more detail. This is the stencil, the cardboard cutout. As you can see, it's the silhouette of a frogman. And this is the author. Marinai was working as a publicist in Florence, and he spent some time in Manhattan between 1978 and 1979. And as we know, New York at that moment was undergoing a creative explosion, particularly in the East Village, where most of the art scene was concentrated and where Marinai, in fact, was living. During his stay in New York, he was interested in all the art scene that was taking place inside and outside the galleries. He remembers seeing stencils by different artists, and he especially remembers the case of Samo, in case he got this t-shirt by Samo from a mutual friend they had. So the idea of the project was to bring a little bit of that cosmopolitan and underground New York flavor to Florence. And that might have been the reason why he chose a diver, or a soup, that's another name for diver, for the project, because that frogman worked as a kind of metaphor of many of the concepts that he wanted to bring and explore, because the frogmen are subterranean and subaquatic and subconscious, subversive, etc. So the late 70s and the early 80s were very convulsive in Italy, and were characterized by polarization, political violence, strikes, terrorism. And in Florence, and I guess in Italy in general, the walls were totally covered with political graffiti inherited from the spirit of May 1968, and the walls were periodically washed over. So therefore, during those years, there was mostly either political graffiti or nothing. So an intervention like the frogman in that context were something totally new. Okay, the main source for all these photographs is Pino Marchi. So many Italian artists at that time were developing projects in the public space, sometimes even without permission, and outside the official art circuits as well. And by the end of the 70s, Italy had developed a solid culture of dissent, as reflected in the presence of many groups that put together people who were connected to experimental art and interested in strategies of cultural contestation. Marinai wasn't an official member of any of these particular groups, but took part in the general Florentine countercultural scene and felt politically and artistically attached to the principles in general of situationism. And situationism had also inspired most of the alternative cultural scene in Florence anyway. So for example, here we have these 3 graffiti found in Florence during those years. I'm going to translate. Society is a spectacle mediated by images and colors. Situationism is a method or a version of the infamous never work by Guy Debord. So this testifies the presence of situationism in Florence back at that time. We have been discussing today the importance of photography to preserve the ephemeral. And in this case, it was the photographer Silvia Marilli who not only documented the stencils, but she also captured beautiful views of Florence from that year. And I'm gonna pass some of those pictures because I think they are worthy by themselves. Well, as you can see, many of her photographic angles show the frogmen in conversation with their context. For example, here we have two of them that were taken next to a shop window and next to a sign of sales. What invites framing the frogmen as an advertising logo, thus stressing the idea of public space as a space of consumerism. So some of these image suggestions are also reinforced in the text, as you can see here with this piece of text that I left. So another component is the public's reaction. So by November, more or less, Marinai stopped intervening in the street, but kept walking the city to document and reflect upon the anonymous responses to the frogmen. The simplicity but mysterious familiarity of that sign and its repetition had made people connect with the project, provoking curiosity and somehow activating the pre-existing need to leave a mark. In that sense, the frogmen worked as a sort of prompt, and so other aquatic themed stencils such as mermaids and whales and other kind of fishes, as well as political signs or speech balloons with conversations were added, thus introducing specific narratives and taking the project to another level. So here are some examples of those spontaneous anonymous interventions. So as you can see, we have the frogmen chasing the mermaid and dreaming of having a romance, or the whales chasing the frogmen, or the idea of the fish swimming in the opposite direction and going against the grain, or this kind of like more serious thoughts and conversations with the speech balloons that people were adding. Okay. So we have the exhibition that Marinai decided to organize in this art gallery. And this might be important in the timeline because, as Ulrich Blanchet explained in his article for the last issue of Urban Creativity, it took longer for stencil art to be officially recognized in exhibitions. So in fact, I think this was, the first one was in 1985 by McCormick in New York. And yet this is not exactly an exhibition of stencils, it's photographs with the stencils. I know that somehow Marinai was playing around with the idea of trying to sell the cutout, okay? So the idea of selling something or exhibiting the stencil was there. And as you can see, Marinai was also doing this performance. So he was dressed in a scuba diving suit, remained tied to a chair and declared his authorship to the media. And we have this text that Marinai was writing. It's a text that follows the diary format with entries of each day explaining his night incursions and adventures. However, the format of the diary is nothing but a mere structure that guides the reading. Actually, some of the parts of the text are fragmented, describe states of mind, and follow a kind of collage logic, if that exists. So the text in general is quite obscure and cryptic. For me, this has been one of the most exciting and challenging aspects of being the first one conducting academic research about this project. Because on the one hand, I had the evidence, I had the pictures, the images, and I had the main source, which is the artist, okay, who is alive. But on the other hand, I had this hermetic text, which nevertheless is a key component of the project in the way it has arrived to us, because we don't have the stencils on the wall. What we have today is the book. So within the context of the book, of the interventions, the photographs, and the text are at the same level. Other documents that were included as part of the project were a couple of articles, newspaper articles by La Nazione, and this police fine of 15,000 lire for, I translate, having illegally made wall writings on a small diver or frogmen in various city walls. And finally, we have the book that contained everything that we have been talking about. The title can be more or less translated as Frogmen as sign on the walls as for not particular reason or by accident. And today that original publication is hard to find. There is a sample in the Center for Book Art in Manhattan and 2 more in Italian public libraries. I don't think there are any other copies, I mean, in public places. I was able to access this one in the Biblioteca Marucelliana di Firenze, which is a wonderful and weird place to study street art. So my first interest in this project was the street art component. If we isolate that element, and we put it on the map of the Italian post-graffiti scene, we can see how Frogmen was a first in Italy, yet it has been totally unknown during all those years. So, I mean, we are not gonna go over everything here, but we have the very famous exhibition in La Medusa in Rome, which, as far as I know, was the first time graffiti from the United States was setting foot in Europe, for example. So that was at the end of the year. We have the visits of Kate Herring and Basquiat later in the 80s. We have the groundbreaking and seminal book by Francesca Linovi in 1984. So in short, when we look at these historic landmarks, everything happened after Frogmen. Okay, if we take the timeline of stencil art in Europe, we can also see how Aroldo Marinai has been one of the first, yet he's not as famous as Ernest Pignoners or Blake Lerard. Okay, but the Frogmen project goes beyond this. While the main idea was drafted from Marinai's stay in New York, we should bear in mind that by 1979, Marinai was in his 40s, and obviously all the previous experience in the Florentine art scene from the 60s and the 70s impregnates the whole project. In that sense, the book is a genuine result of its time. It departs from something apparently simple, which is the stencil, that turns into a kind of intellectual elaboration. And the final piece, the book, it's in fact the material evidence of the mystifying process generated by the data, the thoughts, the pieces of news, the people's reaction, that dislocates the focus of the art object. So we can spot ingredients from all these movements, like avant-garde, conceptual art, pop art, within the project. And I also mentioned situationism. So throughout the book, some visual or verbal references of specific locations are dropped. So when I was reading the book, when I was also looking at the images, I was thinking of this Frogmen as a kind of derive or mental map. And I decided to draw these 2 psychogeographical maps of Florence, inspired in Guy Debord's ones of Paris, in order to visualize Marinai's itineraries around the city. Okay? And I am going to finish with the cover of this book, which is a re-edition of the original one, including some extras, like an article of Marinai's memories from New York. It was released last week, and the main purpose of this new publication is to make the book accessible for whoever wants to buy it now, because as I said, it was difficult to find. To conceptually reframe the project from the perspective of the 21st century, and especially to connect with the new generation of street artists, especially those who are based in Italy or in Florence, who didn't know anything about it. And I could finish saying that Frogman is the kind of the missing link of Italian street art, but I think that is too pretentious for a project that was meant to be fun. So rather than a pioneer or an antecedent, I am going to be faithful to the ironic title chosen by Marinai, and I'm going to say that Frogman was simply one of the first bleeding of street art in Italy. And I finish with this visionary statement by Marinai that we can apply to here now. People are still talking about the drawings on the walls of Florence. I mean, we are talking about the drawings on the walls everywhere. Many now know that I was the one to start it. So that's it, thank you.
Very good, thank you, Isabel. Very good sharing.
Sorry, I need to.
Yeah, some
and share.
Yeah. So some question, Jaume, you have a question there for Isabel? Someone else wants? Just raise their hands.
Every day, street art reveals, street art explain the many coincidences. Where is the first time that Haroldo was in New York?
I think it was at the end of 1978.
At the end of 1978. So because the activist Ann Messner, what is a not real good known activist, and maybe one of the activists of the first period of street art in New York, Ann Messner did subway interventions, going inside the subway cars dressed as a frogman in 1979. So this is another coincidence of the history, you know, that every year we find more linkings between Europe and New York, or Europe and many other cities. In activism, urban art, and I attach you now the link.
Yeah, please.
In intervention.
And I'm gonna send it to Marinai because I don't think he's aware of that, because he had been sharing with me everything that he had from New York and photographs and so on. And I know he has been working with Ulrich Blanche to put names to some of the images that he had, and he didn't know anything about the name of the artist behind those stencil images that he had. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jaume. Very good addition here, like connecting dots. I don't know if someone else have a question, a comment, an addition. No one?
I would just say that historically it brings to mind what you were saying about the Lower East Side, and especially about Europeans and kind of fringe artists that were coming to New York. They were also going to the South Bronx, where I lived, and Stefan Eins famously, you know, he opened Fashion Moda, and he brought a lot of those guys from downtown and Europe up with him. So some of those ideas did spread with some of the programming up in the Bronx.
So in both directions, so from Europe to New York, and then in the other direction. So,
yeah, I mean, it was all downtown. I mean, of course, historically in New York, downtown, the Lower East Side, Tribeca, in those areas, you know, it still had kind of like the immigrant poor class that was coming in. It was just the creative class, not, you know, not the traditional Ellis Island people. But that said, you know, that moment that Frogman was experiencing New York, that concept of street art wasn't just a downtown thing. You know, it was also uptown with some of the programming that was going on, kind of melding in with graffiti artists like myself and others.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about, in fact, using the term street art. In the article that I wrote, I'm separating post-graffiti and street art I'm aware that it has nothing to do with graffiti, but somehow what I wanted to transmit is that idea that back at that time, maybe things were a little bit more mixed up, or at least the way Marinai took the idea and brought it to Italy was like that. So there are elements in the fragment of tagging, because he's tagging with an icon. There are elements of getting up. It's like to put as many fragments as possible. There are elements of the idea of repetition, identity. So this is why I decided to use street art. But it's true that it's a weird term. Everything.
Well, you know, just to interject for a second, it's like that to me, I think is your case about it as street art. Does make sense to me, because again, just as graffiti was street art, but I think now in contextualizing what we see now, which is different, which is in the tradition of mural art, right? Muralism. And I'm very clear about that distinction with artists. And yes, vernacular, you know, the vernacular is whatever, street art, but in shit, what art has never not been on the street? So it's fascinating. It's you know, again, good, bravo for you for the research.
Thank you.
Jacob, you have your raised hand.
You're mute, Jacob.
Thank you. Thank you for a great presentation. Somebody I only have a vague concept. I enjoyed especially this kind of cultural mapping that you did before the psychogeographical mapping, when you mapped out the punk and the board and this different. But I was just thinking, couldn't that kind of mapping where graffiti and street art becomes a kind of entity on that map, couldn't that graffiti and street art function as well as Mattia in this? I mean, graffiti and street art is also connected to punk and to a lot of different contexts. It's just something I was wondering, if you would take a more modern graffiti writer or street artist, do you think it would look similar, the kind of cultural map or cultural scheme?
I don't think so. I guess it would depend on the artist. I don't want to generalize, but what I meant with that map is to say that the reference wasn't as simple as, oh, I saw a stencil, I'm gonna copy it. But there were all that like punk culture and the concerts that Marina was going to, and then all the alternative also punk culture in Florence, and how everything somehow it's part impregnating the book. I guess today we'll have other kind of map. We'll have, I don't know, social media and, you know, like more mediated. Maybe punk would be so much mediated, you know, through other things. I guess the cultural map would be totally different. Yeah. Now that as soon as I'm talking, I'm realizing that, yeah, it wouldn't apply to today's artist, I think.
Yeah. But it would be interesting with a comparison in some way, or perhaps a contemporary with him, especially what Carlos pointed out, that is kind of like, sometimes we make, especially the graffiti history, too homogeneous, I think. It has a lot of different cultural influences. It was the melting pot in many ways. That I think. But thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments
and
your questions.
Thank you. I think if we don't have any other direct question in voice, you can use the chat, and we move forward to Jaume, the last presentation of today. Long day already. So Jaume.
Hi everybody. I try to present how I don't see the button. Now, okay. Share the screen, and that's it. It's okay? Everybody see nasty stuff?
Yes, we are
Yes.
seeing.
Okay, magic. So my name is Jaume Gomez, and maybe someone knows me because the last book that we launched last month, Barcelona Showdown, is the subway graffiti history of the Barcelona scene, and many others know me as a formal member of INDAGUE, the National Research Association of Graffiti and Street Art Researchers in Spain. So that's nasty stuff. But for a start, I need to say that this nasty stuff is a project by Craig Castleman, the author of Getting Up, Subway Graffiti in New York, but it's also a project between INDAGUE and Fundación Contorno Urbano. Contorno Urbano is a cultural foundation that uses graffiti and urban art as a tool to make better his neighborhood in Hospitalet de Llobregat near Barcelona. So in 1978, Craig Castleman was a former professor in the Department of English at the High School of Art and Design in Manhattan. In 1977, he started to do several English classes to the students. And in this year, he asked to every classroom what kind of project want to do to apply the English knowledge. So in 1977, every class says graffiti. So he started to do a collective project with different classrooms, and he turned it in the project Nasty Stuff. It was the first academic research paper that is made for also with the students. So there is Craig today with Barbara. He's retired. He's a retired professor, and he's Craig in 1978 with his Minolta inside the tunnels. You can say the insides fulfilled with tags. And there is a shot made by MTA driver. So he make a friends in the MTA train drivers, subway drivers, and he passed time with him. So this is the High School of Art and Design. Many writers go there in that time. Maybe Tracy 168 was one of the first. Fab Five Freddy was a more cultural hip hop developer. Di Quiñones, that Carlos says again. Days, Lady Pink, and many others. I think Faye Adams goes there, and maybe Carlos, after the speech, he can explain more about the High School of Art and Design. So there is the cover, the outside cover and the inside cover. It's made by D2. I'm not sure if it's, in fact, is EA5 too much CA. I'm not sure. Carlos maybe said us before, said us later, sorry. And this is a magic cover. So it's the width transforming a kind of astronaut or plane driver, no? I'm not sure. And he put the name of the book. He put "Oh shit, nasty stuff," because I suppose that they are really sad about English classes. I'm not sure. So what happened is in 1978, Craig goes to Columbia University and don't teach more in the High School of Art of Design, and goes there and goes to anthropology classes and find Margaret Mead. Margaret Mead was one of the best or more known anthropologists in the United States in the late 60s and 70s. And he made his PhD, his doctoral dissertation with Margaret. So the results of this doctoral dissertation were published in 1981 by Mead Press with the name Getting Up Subway Graffiti in New York. So everybody knows that Getting Up on the left, it was the first edition. Craig always said me that he paid for the color shots because this edition has maybe 15 or 20 photo shots in color and many other in black and white. So it was absolutely amazing for European graffiti writers because European graffiti writers don't have photo shots in color. In 84, it was really difficult. Maybe Neon or maybe the first graffiti writers, this or maybe the first graffiti writers who go there. So the right blue and pink cover is the common Getting Up book, but for us, for the south of Europe and South America, the version, the cover of Los Graffiti in Spanish language was absolutely capital, because for the first time we can read and we can understand the subculture that we are representing with the magic, with the same soul that we think that writers of New York did. And we can learn the language, we can learn the codes, we can learn the style, we can learn, and we can understand the ethic rules. And it was really important for us. And when you talk with Mexico or South American writers, they are really shocked about Los Graffiti version because he understands the graffiti subculture through this book. Well, the reason to rescue Nasty Stuff, it was because through the process to transforming a PhD and Getting Up, many materials, many documents, many interviews and photographs were discarded. So today they are a real treasure. Plus 200 unpublished photos, 25 unpublished interviews, and for us it's a real treasure. So since we have the aim to do this project, we make the transcription of the original text, the translation to Spanish. We scan all the slides and the negatives and the black book, because Craig has a magic black book with many sketches of graffiti writers, many of them some legends. So Ramon Sendra developed a new visual identity respecting the A5 basis. This is really important for us. And we are now designing layouts, thinking printing, and making the crowdfunding and media strategy. As everybody can say, this is the interviews. A sample, Wicked Gary, real graffiti pioneers of New York. Bama, I think Mitch, many writers' days. And also interviews with forensic police officers, Hickey and Ski and Rotun, Bianco, many officers. That I'm sure that Carlos can explain many stories. So really interesting questions made Craig in these interviews about how the police decide to approach the problem, why he want to know about way policemen patrolling the cars where writers go inside the yards, about the legacy, he made questions about how writers share his knowledge, share the style between one to another to make a cultural heritage. In fact, subcultural heritage, and today, in fact, is a global cultural heritage. So my shots like this, or this, Mitch, Horse, Part 1, subway shots, insides. And all of this is possible because in 2019, Fernando Figueroa emailed Craig, and Craig was really shocked about that nobody knows him, because Craig always said that people in general think that he was in prison, because I don't know, in Wikipedia or something like that, there is a fake story about Craig Castleman that he said that is in prison. So he was really shocked about this, and decided to come to Spain to make a tour around many cities as Barcelona, Madrid, Valencia, and made 14 conference. The way to pay this amazing tour was producing a new book, Getting Up Again, 40 years later. It was a rare book that in what we save many of the archive of Craig Castleman. We need to say that this archive, because Craig has a real bad memory. Craig lives maybe 3-4 lives, and Craig has a really bad memory. So in this archive of Craig, you can find a mix of photos of graffiti writer donation, own photos, and we are not sure if someone, Henry Chalfant or Martha Cooper, but now we have a clean archive in what is just donations of writers, and there is a magic shots inside. So during the tour, Craig made great friends and became a friend of and a member of INDAGUE, and bequeathed all of his archive to both associations. And now we have the responsibility to make a digital archive with this, because I don't want the archive for nothing. The archive belongs to writers. The archive belongs to subculture. This is the aim, that every writer, all the people can have it. But we need to build a website to upload many photos and do a huge work. So for that purpose, we have decided again to edit part of this unpublished content as a way to found the online archive. So there is a campaign
This is a fantastic archive, phenomenal.
So there is the cover of that Ramon Sendra take from EA5, respecting all the identity logic, because this is the main reason to respect the heritage. So don't have, and he made just the name of the book, and he put the explaining of the title. So keep in touch, because nasty stuff is incoming, and I hope that everybody enjoyed.
Sure. Thank you, Jaume. And I'm
very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm keen to hear first-hand impressions, Carlos. I'm really, and Jacob is raising his hand, so also.
Well, the one thing that stands out for me in this and the work, and I think the collective work that's going on here, is that affirmed something that I believed in and of this culture many years ago as a kid, when I first got introduced to it, because my brother Kel and I were hungry for history and the history of graffiti and who was doing it. And then we realized other graffiti writers were the same in many respects, and they would gather in special places to trade and to paint and stuff, but that there was something much deeper in our awareness of each other and the work that we did. And so with that, there were writers, not just writers who felt this way, there were people who came to New York from Europe or abroad in the world just to look at trains and photograph them. But interestingly enough, when you have somebody like Craig who went to teach students and engage with them at art and design, which was ground zero. And I remember D2 as well, for some of the greatest graffiti writers at that time, that he would kind of like, again, to some of the research that some of you guys are doing, that's beyond just the object or the painting itself. It's the people and why, the reasoning, and who are these kids, and so on. But that the scholarship that he would go on to do would influence a lot of us as well, as to how we would think about and talk about each other in a different way, because we were already discussing some of these broader themes amongst each other, but not in the same language or analytical slant, right? We you know, you said it was beautiful, we said it was deaf or fresh, you know what I'm saying? But we're saying the same thing. But that the research of somebody like him, with some of the, again, with some of us participating, I didn't participate in this particular project, but that it shows how the culture cultivates itself. And I talk about cultural cultivation a lot, right? Because that's what we've done with hip hop, and we do because your guys are the next generation of this stuff, and exploring it with greater depth. That when I see the effort of Jaume and all the other people around this particular project, it's not unique to us as artists. It's in the history of art and art history, dating way back to Vasari and others, but that here we have a culture that's very active in its own self-interest and preservation and scholarship. And so we look back and we research and we dig and we participate and we ask each other for help. This was the same case with Style Wars, by the way, when I brought it online and when I did the DVD and all this stuff, is that because it matters to us and it will eventually matter to the rest of the world. So with that, you know, as I see and hear some of these presentations, it, you know, given the journey that art and culture has been taking over the last 40 years, it's a big conversation. So in many respects, you guys, it's not just about the art, nor the artists, right? It's the result of all that stuff, like the implications of what an artist does and then how the rest of the world responds to it. And case in point, where Jacob is going with his research. But that said, the Craig Castleman gem that you have, again, for somebody like me who's seen a lot of that stuff, there's a lot more to see and learn. So I appreciate it. So thank you for the effort.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Jacob, you have your hand.
Yeah. So when can we buy it? When will it be possible to read this?
When?
Yeah.
Maybe next autumn.
Yeah.
Next autumn, because we are maybe in September we must launch the crowdfunding project, because all the projects that we made are made with the subculture.
Yeah.
Maybe we can find some sponsor, but it's really difficult. I think that we speak in one day we speak with Ket One, I think, I'm not sure it's a partner of Carlos, maybe Kate.
Cat, yeah, with the museum, you know, that there's that's why things like this need to be, again, shared and amplified, so that rest of the people can both institutions and just the community. I mean, again, we have to kind of we have an amazing resource in our own community, and we don't even begin to understand this amazing economy let's just take this out of context for a second, because because I've been on both sides of this, where you guys are in terms of the academic research and pursuit, and that there is, you know, that is a kind of social entrepreneurship that is locked into hip hop culture and street art, and, you know, the same one foot in academia and stuff. But that there's a mechanism in all of this that's in place as the entrepreneurs to create things that can be supported and financed, right? And it can be created, how do we create value, right, for these things? And we continue to. And we're seeing that's these kinds of books, like the Craig Castleman, end up at MoMA. They end up at the Met. They end up at all these museums and schools and stuff like that. But again, there has to be a call to action from the community. One of the things that works really, and I gotta say this is one of the things I'm really proud of at the museum, is the library, the books that we offer. They're constantly in rotation. There's so many, you can't keep them. And that shows to me an appetite for the kind of research that's being done right now.
I think Esteban, our partner from Fundación Contorno Urbano, send the ancient one that we produced with Craig, send it to get one for the library. I'm not sure, because I think that you are in 2 cities, no? In New York and Los Angeles, or just
no, just Miami.
Just Miami, sorry, Miami. Okay. So they send it to Miami. So next book, we send it also to Miami. And next autumn is the date that we want to produce it. And maybe some sponsor, but we need to find it logic and I don't know the name in English.
Can I ask you a question?
Appropriate sponsors.
Let me ask you a quick question. This is just my marketing head, because does this project have an Instagram account?
No.
Well, then that's where you need to start.
Yeah.
That's where you need to start.
Well, in fact, we have both association has an Instagram account. And
no, the project specifically. Keep it specific to the project.
Not the project, because we share in both Instagrams, and we made this video with this aim. Right. So, but I understand you.
Yeah,
because
that should definitely be. But I just wanted to fill in on the also for us in Northern Europe, Craig Castleman's book was really the Getting Up was really important, and it was more or less obligatory reading. And today I find it fascinating that we were 15, 16-year-olds, and many of us not doing very good in school, and not reading English, not attending English classes. I think I learned more English from reading that book from page 1 to page 200 and something by, so that was something you were supposed to do when you were a teenager in Stockholm, at least if you have a little bit of ambition. I wonder if you're familiar with because he was gone for a long time, but the thing that he resurfaced in his book has always been with me, but in 2003, the Swedish writer and street artist Adams actually made him publish a little recollection, which situates the project so interestingly, and he talks about an event together with Lee Quinones, which I think is one of the best ways of understanding the economic and cultural cooptation processes of graffiti in the late 70s and early 80s. So I'm also a little bit curious that you say that he has a bad memory, because reading that text is like I'm being there with them at this this mansion, upper West Side mansion with the Russian caviar and everything and yeah. So it's because so is that text. You familiar with that? That short. It's a short text, but it's.
Yeah, I know it. I have the book. I have the book.
Yeah.
Because it's a Swedish book that includes a Greek text and many another researchers. I'm not sure if you have a text inside, or maybe
There's several. It's Adam's. I think it's his master's project from Konstfack, which is an art school.
Yeah.
And so it was, he do it yourself. He did do it yourself markers and spread them around. Yeah.
It's a tiny book with I don't know, the paper hardcover
cardboard
yeah.
binding.
I have it.
Yeah. But I'm really looking forward to see the nasty stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Also, Peter is sharing here the full text of Adams. So I think we have a day for now, right? I thank you again so much. See you tomorrow again, hopefully, and then also on Saturday. So good rest for everyone. I will stop this recording and stuff, and keep well. Okay. Talk soon. Bye. Bye. Stay well. Bye.